Okay, so I have shown you one method of finding the critical path. We're now going to talk through instructions for another method right here. So this is EST and LST forward and backward scanning. So it says, to complete a scan, first draw a box with 2 cells at each vertex. So in this technique, what you do is for each vertex, you draw a box like this and cut it in the middle. So you draw a box like that, put it in the middle. So for each of them, you do that. For each vertex, you put in 2 boxes next to each vertex. Now you're going to start your early start time, and you find the early start time, the EST, by doing your forward scan. So that's the earliest time an activity can start, taking into account any predecessors. Now you always want to consider the largest value moving forward. The EST value goes in the left-hand cell, starting by putting a 0 in the early start time cell for the first vertex. So this right here is showing you that you put a 0 in the first one. Then you continue filling in the EST moving forward. So the EST is found by adding the duration of the predecessor activity to the EST of the predecessor activity. So for instance, you go 0 plus 10 is 10. Then you go 10 plus 300. Now, whenever you've got 2 edges coming to one vertex there, before you put anything in the box, you put it next to it. So 10 plus 10 is 310. And then you come here and you come back here. So you'd go 0 plus 5 is 5. Then you'd go 5 plus 5, and now you put that 10 there. And now you're going to ask yourself the question, what number, 10 or 310, goes into the box? And it's always the larger number. So if we read here, it says, where 2 or more activities come together at the beginning of another activity, write all possible values and the predecessor activities that they come from next to the cell. And that's what we've done there. Write the largest value into the cell. This is the activity's EST. So you take the larger one and you put it into the cell. Then finally, it says the EST of the final vertex is the minimum completion time for the project. So that right there is your minimum completion time for the project, 318 seconds. You also want to make sure you use one color moving forward. Now, again, let me just say, we used an alternative method instead of using the box when we were doing it up here. And I feel that it's much better. So as you can see here, we went, 0 plus 10 is 10, 10 plus 300 is 310. Then we went 5 plus 5 is 10. So see how, we wrote 310 and 10 there instead of, writing them next to the box like this. And this also shows me, the reason why I like my technique better is because, it shows me that this is 10, this is 310. And then we just circled the bigger number. And we said, all right, 310 is the bigger one. That's my earliest start time for activity E. So I personally feel it's much easier than putting it in the boxes. So that is why we did it like that when we went through this full thing here. All right. We then continue on to the latest start time. So the latest start time is found by doing the backward scan. So the latest start time an activity can start if the whole project is still completed on time. We find this by starting at the finish and working our way back to the start. So the smallest value moving backwards is the one that we now want to consider. And that's different to when we were doing the forward scan, when you want to consider the largest value moving forward. All right, the LST value goes in the right-hand cell. So all of these values here, all of these are my LSTs. They're my LSTs. When all the ones in the left-hand cell, this one, are my ESTs. All right, so start by copying the EST from the final vertex into the LST of the same vertex. So you begin by taking this and you copy it there. Then you're going to take this value, subtract that, 318 minus 3 is 315. Then you do it again. 315 minus 5 is 310. Now, when you come to this point right here, you're going to go, all right, I've got 2 things coming backwards, but that's no problem. I go 310 minus 300 is 10. Then I go 310 minus 5 is 305. But now you're in a position where you've got 2 edges going back into a vertex. So what you want to do is before you put anything into the vertex is you go 10 minus 10 is 0. Write it next to the box. Then you go 305 minus 5 is 300. And you put that there. Now, when you're working backwards, you want to consider the smaller number. So you want to consider, in this case, the 0. And that 0 now goes into this box right here. And that's exactly what it says here. Write the smallest value into the cell. This is the LST. And when we see other examples, using this technique of going from the circling the smallest value is going to make more sense later on. Okay, so use a different color to do the backward scan. So make sure you use 2 different colors when you're going forward, when you're going backwards, otherwise it does get confusing. We already spoke about the float time. So the float time of each activity's float time can be found by subtracting the EST from the LST. We've spoken about that. So for activity D here, you go 305 minus 5 gives you a float time of 300 seconds. And we had quite a long discussion as to what that means, and it's written there for you as well. We also had a long discussion about what the critical path means. So the critical path is the critical activities. So the critical activities of the project are the ones with a float time of 0. So these are the activities that are critical that cannot be delayed. And the critical path is simply the sequence of critical activities for the project. So for instance, here you got 0, 0, 10, 10, 3, 10, 3, 10, 10, 3, 15, 3, 15, 3, 18, 3, 18, and you're just doing a line through all of those. So for example, the critical path for this is A, B, E, F, as highlighted below. So that is a bit of a description of critical path analysis. And remember, using these boxes is just one technique. I personally prefer this technique up here when we're not drawing boxes and we're just drawing in lines, and that's what we had a big long discussion with at the beginning. So, you can do it this way with the boxes, and in Edrollo, when you're going through your textbook questions, they put the boxes in, but I personally prefer doing it like this. And I've recorded myself going through some Edrollo textbook questions using my method, so you have something to refer to as you're going through your exercises as well, and I'll make sure that they're accessible to you. All right, we now go into the next part.